On December 14th of 1992, a deranged man wearing the t-shirt of a hardcore rock band went to the college he attended with an absolutely evil plan. After an investigation, authorities uncovered several shocking details about who exactly this man was. This is the case of Wayne Lowe. Hello, friend, and welcome to High Time Crime. My name's Joel, and on here I specialize in true crime and also hanging out with aliens. But anyway, today we're going over the case of a potential child prodigy turned to evil killer. Wayne Lowe was born on November 14th of 1974 to parents Shia Wei Lowe and Lin Lin Lowe. Shia, Wayne's father, was a fighter pilot for the Taiwanese Air Force, while Lin, Wayne's mother, was a violin teacher. He had one brother named Ryan who was 5 years younger than him. Altogether, the family lived in Tainan, Taiwan before moving to the United States in the spring of 1981. The first place the family settled was in a nice suburban neighborhood in Rockville, Maryland. Here, Wayne's father was given a diplomatic post at an embassy in nearby Washington, D.C., and Wayne became part of the local Montgomery County Youth Orchestra. Early on, Wayne showed a lot of potential. He was known for being a very polite, hardworking, and intelligent kid, and he even showed signs of being a musical prodigy. Wayne was incredibly good at violin and could play practically anything.
Playing the Polonaise Brilliant by Henry Wieniawski.
2 years later, in 1983, Wayne's father gave up his position at the embassy, and for a short while the family returned to Taiwan. Within only 4 years, however, they immigrated permanently back to the United States to live in Billings, Montana. Upon moving back, one of the Lowe's family friends encouraged them to open up a Chinese restaurant, and that's exactly what they did. The name of the restaurant was the Great Wall Restaurant, and it was located at Grand Avenue. The Lowe family did as much as they could to ensure Great Wall was a strong, thriving business. Meanwhile, as Wayne grew up, he became a devoted student in school and a successful athlete. Wayne first attended Lewis and Clark Junior High in 7th and 8th grades, and then Billings Central Catholic High School for 9th and 10th grade. While in junior high, Wayne won multiple violin competitions and even attended the Aspen Music Festival, where he trained under a prestigious violin teacher. Then in high school, Wayne continued playing the violin as part of the Billings Symphony Orchestra. Additionally, he became a part of the school's basketball team, and despite being a little on the shorter side at 5'4", he was pretty good. Evidently, he had tried playing baseball as well, but his father never allowed him to because he was afraid Wayne would damage his hands and then find himself unable to play the violin. A lot of pressure was put on Wayne by his parents to get good grades and help out with family-related matters. He was expected to come home every day, clean the house, study for school, take care of his younger brother, and help with the family's restaurant. Michael's father, in particular, was a strong disciplinarian and came from a pre-democratic Taiwan where they were still under a dictatorship. Frequently, whenever Wayne misbehaved or did something wrong, his father Shia hit him with something known as a riding crop, which is a type of whip used for riding horses. Unfortunately, Wayne's father, being this way, came at the expense of his son's mental well-being. At first, Wayne's teachers at Billings Central High School and his friends found him to be friendly and easy to get along with. Sure, every now and again he would have disagreements with teachers over certain subjects, but for the most part he was pretty well behaved. Heck, Wayne even sent his teachers postcards during Christmas time and visited them on vacation. But then, during his sophomore year, his focus began to drift, and his grades took a hit. The extreme pressure of being under his parents' dominion led to him experiencing a lot of anxiety and depression. And the way in which Wayne reacted to this was a bit unusual. While in school, he soon began bragging to his teachers about his slipping grades. According to one teacher, he even told her before Easter break that she didn't need to return his papers because, quote unquote, this would be his last class. Additionally, another teacher said that he believed Wayne was acting a bit Then, not long after this, out of the blue, Wayne stole his mother's car and drove all the way to Oregon to visit a girlfriend. In total, Wayne spent 5 days with the girl before returning back home. Some have suggested that Wayne's mental breakdown during this period of time was actually a manipulative tactic to get away from his parents. Apparently, he had used threats of being for leverage as recently as less than a year before. He claims to have done so after meeting a girl at the Aspen Music Festival. Wayne later said during an interview, "I was really into this Mormon chick, but she won't give me the time of day, so being pathetic, I would kill myself and she called the cops on me." So whatever was going on with Wayne during this time period, something needed to change. Soon, with the help of his teachers, letters were sent out to some boarding schools. Then in September of 1991, Wayne was accepted to a boarding school called Bard College at Simon's Rock. This school is a liberal arts college in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. It focuses primarily on gifted students who aren't being properly challenged in normal school. 2/3 of students who attend Simon's Rock only spend a couple of years here before transferring to other colleges with more options in terms of their majors. The tuition here was very high, at around $20,000 in 1992, which adjusted for inflation is now worth about $44,500. And while Wayne's parents couldn't afford it, he was provided with a scholarship that eased the burden. The same year Wayne was accepted here, he also finally became a United States citizen at the age of 17. But as it turned out, this new left-leaning school would not really be a good fit for him. The values that many of his fellow peers had, Wayne rejected entirely. In fact, Wayne's personal beliefs were on the complete opposite side of the spectrum. It's not entirely clear what prompted these beliefs, but Wayne had publicly made several racist and anti-Semitic remarks. At one point, for example, he wrote a school essay suggesting that the Holocaust never took place and that gay people should be banished to Utah in order to stop the spread of AIDS. Around the same time he was writing stuff like this, Wayne also effectively gave up his ambitions for being a violinist. He told his violin teacher that he no longer wanted to take lessons and that instead he planned to become a lawyer. Then, the summer before his second year at Simon's Rock, Wayne took a couple of 6-week courses at Cornell University. Now, also in keeping in line with his elitist views, Wayne explicitly claimed to feel a certain sense of superiority over the other students at Simon's Rock. He viewed himself as a jock, while the other students were the outcasts. Wayne was later quoted as saying, "Simon's Rock is a high school for outcasts. Although they might not officially acknowledge it, everyone knows it. I attended SRC to get away from home, not high school. I became an outcast at SRC because all of the outcasts became the majority. So there weren't any jocks or preppies at SRC. I guess I was the jock. So it was sort of a reverse Columbine." Within a matter of time, Wayne found a small group of students at SRC that agreed with his sentiments. The names of the other members of the group were Kevin, Jared, and Eddie. Collectively, they were known as the hardcore group, mostly because of the type of music they listened to, which was hardcore rock. Wayne and the group were at the bottom of the social hierarchy of Simon's Rock, and the other students viewed them as being very angry and resentful. Wayne and his friends would apparently sit at one end of the school's cafeteria and make jokes about killing people that they weren't fond of. Meanwhile, it's no secret that other students at Simon's Rock were scared of the hardcore group. On multiple occasions, Wayne suggested that he was going to buy a machine gun and begin shooting people in the dining hall. He even added that he would target people specifically based on their race and orientation. Not everything Wayne and the hardcore group said or claimed to believe was entirely serious, but the problem became the fact that the line between jokes and real life eventually blurred. Before long, one member of the hardcore group named Eddie got expelled from school for making a threat toward a female student. Not long after this, Wayne also found himself at the wrong end of an interaction with a girl. This too was discussed during the interview he did years later. I met this girl Allison and we hit it off, but then I guess she got tired of me, but I still pursued her. She then told my faculty advisor I was annoying her. When my advisor informed me of this, I got scared as well because I didn't want to get in trouble, so I totally backed off. Pretty much ran the opposite way when I saw her coming, but SRC is so damn small. Only one library and one dining hall, not to mention the fact she hung out in the boys' dorm a lot, so no way I could actually avoid her. Anyway, she left like the second semester of freshman year because she contracted mono. Obviously not from me, let your own imagination explain it. But then years later when she appeared on the AE documentary, Rampage Shooters, she claimed she left because of me. During Wayne's sophomore year at Simon's Rock, his trajectory remained the same. Towards the beginning of the first semester, Wayne and a friend drove up to a gun store 12 miles away from Simon's Rock called Bob's Corner Store. Here, Wayne asks the store clerk if he sold assault weapons or if he was aware of anyone else who did. In response to both questions, the clerk told him no. And that same night, before bed, the same clerk told his wife about the interaction, saying that the kid he talked to, aka Wayne, appeared to be crazy and dangerous, and that he had a feeling something bad was going to happen. And unfortunately, this prediction would prove to be accurate. But in the meantime, Wayne didn't have any access to any guns, so he couldn't do anything. About a week before Thanksgiving break in 1992, Wayne came down with a case of the chicken pox. As a result, he was forced to remain at Simon's Rock instead of flying back home for the holiday. Now, usually the area where Wayne slept was in the dormitory house called Kendrick House. But during breaks such as this, the small amount of students still at the school were expected to stay in one dorm area so the teachers could more easily keep track of them. But Wayne, being the type of person he was, took it upon himself to ignore these instructions. As opposed to sleeping in the area he was supposed to, he secretly moved back to the Kendrick house without anyone's knowledge. Once the staff figured out, this created a lot of tension between Wayne and a man by the name of Floyd Robinson, who was the residence director of the dormitory. Floyd was African American, and as it turns out, Wayne and Floyd had already had some beef over Wayne's beliefs. When Floyd learned about Wayne moving back to the Kendrick house, he punished him, and in turn Wayne got really angry and said to him, "If I'd known you were going to throw the whole book at me, I would have gotten my money's worth. I have the power to bring the whole school down to its knees." Shortly thereafter, following the reopening of school and the end of Thanksgiving break, Floyd Robinson and his wife received an anonymous death threat. As for who was responsible, well, it's never been confirmed. But hey, I don't think that it takes a genius to figure out who the likely culprit was. Anyway, on December 4th of 1992, Wayne's family paid him a visit at the college. During their stay, Wayne provided his mother and younger brother Ryan with a little tour through the school. He showed them the Kendrick house, the library, and other places. And according to his family, Wayne appeared to be pretty happy and content. Evidently, he even talked about coming home for spring break. But only 1 week after this, Wayne took an action that appeared to be much different from the image he was projecting to his family. Over the phone, he made a call to a mail-order gun catalog and ordered a bunch of firearm parts and ammunition. This included 200 rounds of copper-jacketed steel core bullets, 30-round magazine, and a folding plastic stock. The company was located in North Carolina, and Wayne paid extra to have the order shipped as fast as possible. Ironically, despite doing this, however, a snowstorm delayed the shipment from Saturday, December 12th to Monday, December 14th of 1992. Now on Sunday, the night before the shooting, Wayne claims to have experienced voices in his head telling him to read revelations from the Bible. The voices apparently claimed once Wayne read the revelations, he would know what to do. Soon after he did as they commanded, he came to the conclusion after reading that there were certain people at Simon's Rock that needed to be punished. Despite all of this, I think it's worth pointing out that, as we discussed earlier, Wayne had a habit of acting like he was crazy or disturbed in order to manipulate others. And according to a friend of his named Jared, that's exactly what Wayne was doing here. And how did Jared know this? Well, according to him, that night, Wayne called him into his room and showed him the passages he was writing in his journal. Jared reportedly asked what he was writing, to which Wayne replied saying that he was copying passages from the book of Revelations so that people would think he had gone insane. Not only that, but earlier in the day, Jared claimed to have ran into Wayne in the library, and that when they spoke at that point, Wayne explicitly said to him he was planning to bring a gun to school and murder people. Apparently, Jared didn't tell anybody about Wayne's threat at first because he didn't think he was being serious. But Wayne was. The next morning on Monday, December 14th of 1992, Wayne woke up with an absolutely wicked plan in his mind. Upon waking up, he called a place known as Dave's Sporting Goods in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, and asked if they knew how he could order a gun. The workers there took a look at the gun laws of the state and concluded that if he were an official resident of Massachusetts, he wouldn't have legally been allowed to buy one without a long and thorough waiting period. However, because Wayne was from the state of Montana, a Massachusetts law had been passed that would allow Wayne to buy a gun under the laws of the state he was from instead of Massachusetts. Evidently, this law had been passed specifically on behalf of an NBA basketball player by the name of Kevin McHale. Kevin was frustrated about not being able to buy a gun to go bird hunting, and so he effectively convinced the state assembly to pass a law for him to be able to do so. Which, by the way, is absolutely crazy. The idea that a basketball player from the Boston Celtics could just get his own law passed for something like that is practically unbelievable now. Nevertheless, it happened, and he was going to be one of the first people to abuse it. In the meantime, around 10:30 a.m. on Monday, Wayne's package finally came in the school mail, and it was intercepted by the receptionist of the college. Immediately, the receptionist found the package to be suspicious. She saw the label, which read Classic Arms, and naturally that set off alarm bells. Soon, the receptionist contacted the necessary authorities in the school, and Floyd Robinson, the residence director of Wayne's dormitory, was notified. In turn, Floyd, the same man who had likely received a threat from Wayne personally, brought the package with him to a meeting he already had scheduled with the dean of the school. During Floyd's meeting with the dean, whose name was Bernard Rogers, the two of them discussed what they should do about the package. Now, as most of you know, it's illegal to open other people's packages without their consent. However, were the package to actually contain a firearm, that would be a violation of school policy. So they were sort of caught between a rock and a hard place. Ultimately, Floyd and Dean Rogers settled on just returning the package to the mailroom. But at the same time, they would try to interrogate Wayne about this and get him to open it up in front of them. The person who would end up doing this would be a woman by the name of Trinka, who was Floyd Robinson's wife. Trinka also lived at the college and was another residence director of Kendrick House. So about an hour later, Wayne picked his package up from the mailroom and took it back to his room. Then, shortly thereafter, Trinka called Dean Rogers and asked him what she should do about the situation. Dean Rogers told her to request to check out what was in the package and ask Wayne some questions. At the same time, though, he didn't give her permission to search Wayne's room. So after heading up to Wayne's room, Trinka knocked on the door and waited a long time for Wayne to respond. Once Wayne finally answered the door, Trinka was able to see through the crack in the door. All of the contents of Wayne's package were spread out on his bed, with one notable exception being the ammunition, which was nowhere to be found. All Trinka saw were the firearm attachments. When Trinka inevitably asked Wayne about the stuff he had bought and what he was doing with it all, Wayne responded saying that he planned to take the stuff that was on the bed back home with him to modify a firearm, while the ammunition he had bought he would give that to his father as a present. Ultimately, Trinka never ended up asking Wayne to search his room, and when she was finished talking to him, she returned to her room and called Dean Rogers again. Over the phone, the dean asked for Wayne to be sent to his office right away. Now, believe it or not, Wayne already had a meeting with the dean planned for 11:30 that morning to discuss a separate matter, but Wayne didn't show up until 12. And upon meeting with Dean Rogers, Wayne put on a very good act. He told the dean essentially the same thing that he told Trinka, that the gun parts were for his use and he would take them home during spring break, and that the ammunition was part of a gift for his father. And overall, Wayne acted very respectfully to Dean Rogers, like the mask of your typical psychopath. Then, once their meeting was over, Wayne called up a cab and had the cabbie come pick him up and drive him to the same store he contacted earlier in the day, Dave's Sporting Goods in Pittsfield. After arriving at Dave's, Wayne went in, bought a semi-automatic SKS rifle for $129, and left. From that point, he then returned to the college and snuck the gun onto campus using a guitar case. Overall, the process of taking cabs back and forth and shopping for the gun took as long as a couple of hours. Because it took Wayne longer than he expected, though, once he arrived back at school, he found himself running late to a finals exam. Throughout the course of taking the exam, Wayne wrote 2 essays on the subjects of power and civilization. And on the last page of his exam book, he finished by writing a couple of deranged biblical-style passages that said, "Anyone adding to this book, God will add to him the plagues mentioned here. Anyone taking away from this book, God will take away his tree of life. Amen. God be with you." This was likely yet another self-inflicted effort to make him seem crazy, which, by the way, just goes to show how planned out this entire thing was. Wayne was not a dumb person, and he was even already factoring in what would happen after he committed the crime. He was already laying the groundwork for an insanity defense during a would-be trial. Regardless, once Wayne was done his exams around 3 p.m., he hurried back to his room to continue the preparations. Using the firearm attachment he had bought, he modified his SKS rifle. While the original version has a wooden stock, he replaced that with a foldable plastic stock in order to make the gun a bit more compact. Not long after this, a bit before dinner time, Wayne decided to hit up the weight room and do a little bit of lifting. Next, he returned to his dorm, and once dinner rolled around, his friends all showed up at his room. According to Wayne's friends, the ammunition box he claimed was for his father was sitting on his bed when they arrived. After arriving, Wayne and his group left for dinner in the dining hall. While there, Wayne began acting a bit weirder than usual. First of all, he repeated his threat from a day earlier about bringing a gun to school and killing people. Evidently, one person in Wayne's group then replied to Wayne's threat and suggested that were Wayne to go through with something like this, it would be his quote-unquote last supper. And so with that idea in mind, Wayne drank some cranberry juice and ate white bread, acting like it was a wafer. This was supposed to be an imitation of communion like they do at church. Shortly thereafter, when the rest of the group had left to return to their respective dorms, only Wayne and his friend Jared remained. Jared said that he asked Wayne why he would ever consider killing people, to which Wayne suddenly became very serious and replied, "Because I don't care anymore. I don't want to live." Unlike the day before, Jared actually believed Wayne this time. It was pretty clear Wayne was no longer joking. So recognizing this, Jared made the decision to contact Floyd Robinson and his wife Trinka and let them know about the stuff Wayne was saying. It's also been reported that Wayne spoke with another friend of his named Jeremy, saying a similar thing he had told Jared. Jeremy was not a part of the hardcore group per se, but he was a close acquaintance with a few of them, including Wayne. According to Jeremy, Wayne's threats had spooked him enough that he too found it necessary to call up necessary authorities and tip them off. First, he called campus security several times, but all he got was their answering machine. So next, he called up Trinka directly and told her Wayne was planning on killing her and her husband, Floyd. As for when Jeremy thought Wayne might do such a thing, Jeremy could only guess, and his guess was the following day, which would end up turning out to be way too late. But after his phone call with Trinka in turn called none other than Dean Rogers himself. Then, after calling the dean, Trinka soon called the provost. For those that don't know, a provost is the chief academic officer and sometimes referred to as the vice president of the college. The provost is a higher authority than even the dean. So by this point, you're probably realizing that the amount of warning signs and red flags was frustratingly high. Not only that, but every higher authority possible was notified many hours before the event. Nevertheless, it would still end up happening. But once the provost was notified of the threats to Trinka and Floyd and their family, he went to the area of the dorm where Trinka lived to keep her safe. Now at the time this was happening, Trinka's husband Floyd was in a dorm meeting on the other side of the building. The meeting included several students, including, believe it or not, Wayne himself. Throughout the meeting, Floyd and Wayne had apparently argued, but nothing more. But once it finally ended, Floyd and Wayne both made their way back to their respective rooms. Floyd regrouped with his wife and now the provost and was shocked to learn of the threats made by the same person he had just been arguing with. Soon Floyd, Trinka, and their kids, who also lived at the school, were escorted to safety at the provost's own house. The time was now about 10 p.m. During a discussion at the provost's house, they all collectively agreed that they were going to demand a search of Wayne's room and possibly even call the police. However, by this point, it was far too late. While they were in these discussions, Wayne had already made his way back to his room and begun to proceed with his evil plan. The first preparations, now that the gun was ready, was a series of goodbye phone calls that he made to friends. After that, it was go time. At 10:15 p.m. that night, a 42-year-old woman by the name of Teresa Beavers was working at the guard shack at the front of the college. The guard shack is that little building near the entrance of the campus. On both sides of the road, there was a heavy buildup of snow, but during this night, the sky was dark and clear. At the time, Teresa was on the phone with her husband, and as they were talking, she witnessed a young man with a shaved head walking up to the shack. The young man was a bit on the shorter side, and he was wearing a black backpack and a black t-shirt that read, "Sick of It All." Sick of It All was the name of a hardcore rock band. But more threatening than the outfit was that the person was also carrying a rifle in his hands. When Wayne had gotten close to Teresa, she quickly said to her husband, "Hang on, there's a kid out here with a gun," before setting the phone down. Immediately after this, Teresa's husband heard gunshots ring out from his end of the phone. He also heard his wife saying, "Oh my God, no!" and then a crash and an explosion. As it turns out, as soon as Teresa had opened the door to speak to him, Wayne Lowe had placed the barrel in the crack of the door. Upon seeing the barrel, Teresa quickly tried to close the door, but Wayne shot the rifle twice. After that, Teresa successfully managed to shut the door, but then Wayne went around and shot at her again through the window of the shack. Ultimately, he managed to hit Teresa with 2 shots in her stomach, and while she did end up surviving, she would become permanently disabled. But right after shooting Teresa, a car pulled up to the guard shack, and this would be Wayne's next target. The car was a blue Ford Fiesta, and the driver was a well-respected teacher by the name of Nakunan Sayes. Mr. Sayes was nearly 38 years old and originally from Argentina. He spoke multiple languages and was highly educated, the type of guy who was liked by practically everybody. He had come to the school to pick up some papers to grade, but when he pulled up and saw the dangerous situation, He tried accelerating and was shot in the side of the temple almost immediately. Quickly, Mr. Sayez was killed and his car drifted and crashed into a snowbank on the right side of the road. Next up, Wayne continued walking onto the campus and then made his way over to the side of the road, stood under a bunch of pine trees, and began trying to fix an issue he was encountering with the gun. As he was doing so, a group of 3 students pulled up in their car and noticed the blue Fiesta that had crashed into the snowbank. After checking out the situation, they continued to drive onto campus to go get some help. As they were driving towards the library, they saw Wayne messing with his gun on the side of the road. Wayne was now past the guard shack and well inside the gates of the school, standing under the pine trees. And when Wayne locked eyes with them, he shouted, "Get the f*** out of here," to which the group reluctantly agreed and drove away. Then Wayne manually reloaded his gun with a new magazine. This was something he would have to do repeatedly because the gun kept jamming. But after the gun was good to go, Wayne continued on his rampage. Meanwhile, at his next location, the school library, a student ran into the library and told everyone that there had been an accident at the entrance to the school. One of the students at the library at the time was a super promising, intelligent young man by the name of Galen Gibson. Galen was an 18-year-old poet and theater lover who had gone to the library with a friend to study for finals. His original plans for that night were actually a little different. Originally, he planned to be at the theater most of that night, helping out with the tech-related stuff for a Christmas concert. But as fate would have it, the concert ended early due to the threat of a snowstorm, so he wound up spending the rest of the night at the library. And when one of the students ran into the library and told everyone about the accident, Galen immediately went and grabbed his coat and began to put it on. However, as he was approaching the library's exit, he was suddenly shot twice, once in the center of his chest and once on his side. The shots came from outside the glass door and did not kill Galen right away. After being shot, Galen staggered back to the table where he had been studying with his hands over his chest and said, "I've been shot, get help." Now at first, the friend he had been studying with, whose name was Rob, thought Galen may have been joking. However, after Rob saw Galen remove his hands from his chest, he witnessed the blood pouring out and recognized what was happening. At the same time, chaos began to ensue. After entering the library with the rifle in his hands, Wayne began shooting at anyone in sight. Everywhere around them, the students in the library heard gunfire, screaming, and glass breaking. Most of them dropped to the ground, and a few, including Rob, began to run for their lives. Rob had successfully managed to escape from the back door, but at least one other person was shot. His name was Tom McElderry, and he was the same student who ran in and told everyone about the car crashing into the snowbank. Luckily, Tom lived because his wound was a non-life-threatening shot in the leg. But after leaving the library, Wayne's next target were the dormitories. He began walking on the sidewalk near the entrance to a dorm called the Dolliver House. Here, a pair of students who had been watching Monday Night Football in the dorm's basement had walked up the steps and made their way to the lobby. Shortly after entering the lobby, they heard some gunshots coming from the library, and they took a look through the glass door to see what was going on. After doing this, they both suddenly found themselves being shot from the other side of the glass outside. The students' names were Matthew David and Josh Faber. Matthew was an 18-year-old sophomore from New Jersey who had a beard and wore glasses. Josh was 15, a freshman, and from New York. Matthew's description of the experience was as follows. "I felt a pressure in my side. I curled up and rolled into a nearby hallway. I lay there and I wasn't sure what happened. Friends were telling me I was shot. I take a look and said, it looks like it just grazed me. But I was told, nope, there's a hole on the other side." Meanwhile, Josh, the other student, said, "I heard an explosion and noticed that I was suddenly sitting on the ground. I first thought that a firecracker had gone off. I looked down at my legs and noticed that I was bleeding from 2 holes in each of my thighs. I could tell my heart was beating because with each heartbeat, more blood came out." Luckily for Josh and Matthew, they would both make it out with their lives, but each would have experienced something terribly traumatic, and Josh would have to have emergency surgery for his bullet wounds. Around the same time as this, police finally got word of what was going on. 2 police officers soon arrived at the scene. When they pulled up to the school in their squad car, they first noticed Mr. Saez's car sitting on the side of the road in the snowbank. After getting out of the car, the pair of officers went their separate ways. Officer 1 went to the guard shack, while Officer 2 went to check out the blue Fiesta in the snow. When Officer 2 examined the vehicle, he saw Mr. Saez laying in the car unconscious, and upon checking his pulse, he realized he was deceased. On the other side, Officer 1 found Teresa Beavers crying and in a state of shock, with her intestines hanging out and blood surrounding her. Poor Teresa evidently thought that the officer coming in to check on her was Wayne coming back to finish her off. Fortunately, that wasn't the case. In fact, by this time, Wayne had effectively given up. In total, he had only shot 13 out of 200 rounds, and after shooting Matthew and Josh at Dolliver House, he got so frustrated with the gun jamming situation that Wayne essentially lost the will to continue. So the final place Wayne went was to the student union. When Wayne entered this building, the only person inside was a student named Simon. As it turns out, Simon had just been a part of the school's Christmas concert where he was one of the people singing. Upon entering, Wayne ordered Simon not to move or he would kill him. Then Wayne plopped down on the couch and zipped open his backpack before taking the magazine out of his rifle. Simon asked Wayne what he had been doing, to which Wayne said, "I'm killing people. I'm fucking shooting people." Then Wayne told Simon to get on the phone and call the police. But due to the stress, Simon couldn't remember how to access the phone, so he just lied and said it was broken. Next, Simon asked if he could leave, and Wayne told him he could. After that, Simon left before returning really quickly to the couch to grab his sheet music and jacket. Man, this dude really must have loved singing, because those items don't sound worth risking your life over to me. Regardless, once Simon left, Wayne picked up the phone and dialed 911 himself. By then, there was already a stream of different students and faculty attempting to call 911, so although Wayne eventually got through, his actual phone call was drowned out by the recordings of the other lines. According to the dispatcher over the phone, Wayne reportedly said, "I'm the person who shot the people at Simon's Rock. The people at Simon's Rock needed to be taught a lesson." Then, the dispatcher sent out 2 more police cars to the college. Within minutes, the student union building was being surrounded by a heavy police presence. From outside the building, police could see Wayne through the window sitting on the couch, using the phone and watching Monday Night Football. It was an extremely tense moment for everybody, but before long, Wayne agreed to come out with his hands up. His only demand was that he wasn't to be shot or injured while doing so. And so Wayne then walked out of the building, dropped to his hands and knees, and surrendered. After the police read him his Miranda rights, they then stood him up, put him in handcuffs, and began asking him questions. One of the officers asked, "Wayne, are you on any kind of drug?" "No, sir," he responded. The officer asked, "Is there anyone else with you?" "No, sir," Wayne responded. The officer then said, "Do you have any more weapons on you?" And Wayne said, "Yes, sir, a can of mace in my back pocket." Once officers disarmed Wayne, they put him in the back of a police car and took him to the station. According to those that were responsible for doing Wayne's booking, he was shockingly calm and relaxed the entire time for someone who had just committed such a terrible atrocity. At the same time, though, Wayne appeared to be somewhat confused and even asked, "What did I do tonight?" Question is, was Wayne putting on an act? Anyway, even though the shooting was over, the nightmare wasn't. 2 people had died and 4 others were injured, some very seriously, and this entire situation took place over a span of only 20 minutes. During the course of their investigation, the authorities raided Wayne Lowe's room in Kendrick House. Inside, they discovered a series of different items, including Christmas postcards to friends, Wayne's personal writings, and a Bible. Inside of the Bible, a few of the pages had paper clips at the top for instant access. One of these pages was from Revelations 20, and it read, "And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads or in their hands. and they lived and reigned with Jesus Christ 1,000 years. But the rest of the dead lived not again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. So what this is essentially talking about is the mark of the beast and divine retribution. Also found in Wayne's room were some drawings and artwork. One of the drawings featured a tiny man with a gun aimed directly at an assault tower, along with the word Red Rum written multiple times. Red Rum, of course, comes from The Shining by Stephen King. It's the word murder spelled backwards. But once the police investigation was finished, Wayne Lowe was charged with 17 different counts that included 2 counts of murder, 4 counts of assault with intent to commit murder, and 4 counts of assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon. Meanwhile, Wayne Lowe's parents, Shia and Linlin, were astonished that this ever could have happened. The idea that their son, who had been such a musical prodigy at the violin and so good at everything else he did, had become a killer was practically unbelievable to them. And on February 3rd of 1994, that same son was officially given 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Now, naturally, during and after this case, there was a decent amount of psychoanalysis done of Wayne performed by various professionals. Some argued he was just an extreme narcissist, while others diagnosed him as a likely case of schizophrenia. The truth is probably somewhere in between, if that's possible. Clearly, Wayne was mentally ill and deranged, but as we showed you earlier, there's also evidence that he was highly conscious of what he was doing, so really we may never truly know. Also, after this case, there was a response in popular culture. The band that Wayne was wearing a t-shirt of, Sick It All, issued a statement denouncing Wayne's crimes. Then in 2004, the band Weezer produced a song about Wayne Lowe titled Lullaby for Wayne. The song's chorus contains the lyrics, "Wayne, you know it's true, there's nothing you can do. So put them guns away, who cares what's wrong or right? So please give up the fight, put them guns away." Unfortunately, this shooting also influenced one of the worst tragedies in America's history, the Sandy Hook school shooting. Evidently, Adam Lanza, the perpetrator, claimed Wayne Lowe as one of the people he looked up to, as horrible as that sounds. Anyway, last thing I want to add is that a few years after this tragic incident, the father of one of the victims, a highly educated man by the name of Gregory Gibson, wrote a book about the subject. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that this book is one of the best books ever written about this type of tragedy. It's called Gone Boy, A Walkabout, a father's search for the truth in his son's murder. In the book, Gibson talks about not only the unique and brilliant character of his son, but the entire experience of a grieving father. While reading, you get to know a lot more about who exactly his son, Galen Gibson, was as a person, and how much of a complete waste it was that Galen was taken from this world so soon. According to a friend, Galen, quote-unquote, could have saved the world. So rest in peace to Galen Gibson, and definitely considering checking out his father's book if you're interested. Also, rest in peace to Professor Nakunan Sayez. Nakunan was an extremely charismatic and handsome linguist teacher who was very popular at the college and known for wearing European-style scarves. He was even a published author and had won awards, but unfortunately he was taken from this world all too soon. May God bless his soul. Lastly, sorry to all those who were injured. This list includes Teresa Beavers, Thomas or Tom McElderry, Joshua Faber, and Matthew David. But anyways, thank you for watching this episode of High Time Crime. If true crime is your thing, then please like and subscribe because it's all we do. I also have an all-exclusive Patreon if you're interested in that. There's a bunch of tiers to choose from, and the third one allows for you to see a Patreon-only video, and that tier and the second one allow you to have your name at the end of each High Time Crime video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care, friend.